Episode 3 of the How to Homestead series. How to not crash course, or burn, or blow up. Should be understood that really understanding yourself and your situation is like building a foundation for your homestead, without which you're more likely to crash and burn or be subpar, lunched, wangosoidal. Previously, we've discussed what is homesteading, and then we overviewed the 4 homestead phases. Now today we get into the first of those phases in detail. So get up to the description and pull out the outline. You may want to print that out when you go through this, or do it later. So we get into assessing your situation, goals, and motivation. Numero uno, got to have sufficient motivation for this. Yeah, top of this list, number A in this is religious convictions. If you have religious convictions, if someone's really committed to God, then what they do will be determined by that. They want to be following God's lead as to, what He would have them do. That's our situation. We both came from diverse backgrounds. I came from science as an atheist. Anyway, we became Christians, and as we studied the Bible carefully, we found there were a lot about prophecies about these end times that we're in. Things are wrapping up in a hurry. We see everything being fulfilled. We don't think there's a lot of time left, and prophecies make clear statements about us getting out of the cities, out into the country, and getting more self-prepared. So anyhow, that's one of our major motivations, and I won't go into great detail with that at this point, but I'll ask you some questions. So if you have religious convictions regarding homesteading, and if you do, pray about it. What would God have you do on this? Think on the above and list how your decisions fit in with your religious convictions. Now, next, number B, we get into prepping for an uncertain world. And this, I would say, is probably one of the primary motivators for most people. It's the idea that we're in uncertain times and we don't know what's ahead. We want to be prepared. We want to have things, ready to go, be able to be self-sustaining. So we have a lot of ground to cover on this. Even many non-believers realize that we're in difficult times right now and that things could get pretty ugly. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that, if the system breaks down, that one's going to be much better off being out in the country than they are in the cities. Having the ability to grow your own food, having things set up for that, having your own water and power generation, it's going to be very helpful. Otherwise, we might be like passengers on the Titanic, where they, purportedly in the movies, where they sat there and danced and listened to the music while the ship sank. And we don't want to be in that position. Aside from having some sort of land and the ability to do something with it, what are the other elements that are important relative to our goals and motivations for getting a homestead? So now that's what we're going to go into here with this list. Now, it should be noted, too, that in many cases, you will have to go about your obtaining a homestead in multiple phases. Some people, you may be in the city and you need to, because of job situation, for example, just make maybe a small move to the suburbs, or maybe there's an intermediate move before you're able to actually get a place out in the country. Or maybe it's an alternate sort of a situation, going to a trailer and then, getting a place in the country. So there may be multiple phases, and then, one can come back and revisit these for each phase of that situation as you move along. Now, probably one of the biggest things in being out in the country and having a homestead, one of the biggest things in having a homestead is having a reliable water supply. Usually you don't control the air, so it's air, water, that's, most important things. Ideally, it should be available all 4 seasons. Should be something that you have control over, that it's not municipal water or something to that effect, that when things crash, you have no water to deal with. It should be something that even when the grid is down, that you have water available. So even if all the infrastructure dissolves, that you'll still have water. You can grow your crops. You can take care of your needs. You'll have water and be able to grow food. I mean, this is a main thing, whether it's a well, whatever. And we're not going to get into the details right now of each decision. We just want to think about, remember, this is from aspects of goals and motivation. So obviously, you're going to need a reliable water supply. Now, I'm going to list these items. Now, you can rank these. One of your homework things, we kind of rank them as to which ones you feel are the most important for you, and what order you would want to seek to obtain each one. Now, food. There's two different elements to food. There's food storage and food generating, preparation, if you will, growing, producing, whatever you want to call it. Food storing, obviously, you can do that anyway, whether you're city, suburbs. But it provides you a buffer zone, gives you the ability to weather a short disruption. It also can allow you in a situation where if you're going to the grocery store and Teotihuacan happens, that it gives you a time element where you can now, be able to shift to growing your crops. We kind of want to rely on that a little bit. I'm not growing as many crops right now as I would if we had to be totally self-sustaining. If I didn't have my job, if we didn't have the grocery stores, all our efforts would go into getting food grown. And it takes a while to get it to grow, and it might not be the right season. So you want to have about a year's worth of stored foods, rice, beans. That and we'll get into lists of that on later parts of the How to Homestead. So there's food storing that we're talking about. Next is food producing. How to survive when the supermarkets are closed. What are you going to do? There's a number of possibilities for your homestead. Ideally, what is your goal here in terms of sustaining you and those you care about? Okay. So growing your own food. There's a number of possibilities here in terms of how to grow your own food. So we've got these possibilities here. Okay, vegetable gardens, fruit trees, raising animals for their products, eggs, milk, meat for their meat, hunting, foraging, aquaculture, hydroponics. So there's a number of different options, and that's something you can rank those. Which ones are you most interested in? Which ones are you least interested in? Rank those. Start getting in your mind how, what you think works for you, because this will help on your other decisions later on. Shelter. Well, we need something. Now, we're not going to go into the details here because there's lots of options. This is the point we're looking at motivation and goals. So it's just the idea of the shelters. It can take many forms. But you need to think, do you have any special needs in regards to that shelter? Sometimes this has to do with medical conditions and problems. Heat. Source of heat. Item D, in many areas, a source of heat is needed for at least part of the year. How are you going to generate that source of heat? Not only be able to heat the environments of your house, but be able to heat water for cooking, heat water for, cleaning needs. Next, defense and protection. Defense, protection. What situations you see could arise that you would need protection? Now, that would be good to list because it depends on how you see these scenarios coming about. What things do you think you'd want to be protected from? How do you see yourself achieving those things? So you want to get that listed down. For example, preventing burglaries. Everyone even in the city is concerned about that. Doing alarm surveillance systems, that sort of thing. Worried about home invasions. What about marauders after, Teotihuacan? If we have something where our infrastructure crashes and there's people going from place to place, just taking whatever they can from others. Kind of along the same lines in terms of protection is medical. What type of medical and first aid supplies do you think you need to have on hand? Is that a consideration? Are you worried about that? One of the things that people often don't think about, the next element is retaining your land. We can get into a homestead, but what happens if, the infrastructure drops down, you lose your job? Well, surely what's going to happen after that is you'll lose your homestead if you can't pay the taxes for it. So there's, property taxes involved, and if you have a mortgage, you have to be thinking about that. You don't want to lose your home to these situations because that's right when you need it. Now, yeah, it's possible they may let you live there during a time where things have dropped off and everyone's suffering like that. But they may not, particularly if you're in a religious group that's going to be targeted by the new regime. If you're someone that's actually following Scripture, then you'll be considered a fundamentalist, which they're going to crack down on. So that's definitely something to think about. Now, next is your fuel needs. Think about anything that you'll really want to run off of fuel from your homestead. Particularly, I'm thinking about times when you have this kind of infrastructure breakdown, Teotawaki. So you may want to think about these and rank these. Propane for cooking, propane for water heating, propane for a generator, gasoline for a chainsaw, gasoline or diesel to run a generator, fuel for a bug-out vehicle, whatever that might be. So something to think about. You need to have stored fuel reserves. And on a homestead, there's different levels of electricity. I've actually got it listed here. Electricity level 0 is on-grid use only. On-grid, the grid goes down, you toast. Some people will get systems set in with solar, but often these are grid tie. The solar's no good when the grid is down. They're in op. You've got no battery storage. You've got nothing. You can't tie into the grid. You can't use it. You're going to be running on a generator, which is a problem. Electricity level 1. You've got some means of recharging batteries and flashlights, headlights, just small items. You can recharge radios, small electronics. You can get a charger for a small AA's and AAA's, so you can charge those from a solar charger and at least have some electronics devices. For getting weather reports, communicating, having lights. Little headlights are good, flashlights. These are all really wonderful in kind of a situation, a grid down situation. Electricity level 2. Now here we get to the point where we have moderate capacity and battery storage. For example, this may give you the ability to run well pumps, to run certain, not household appliances, but power tools, run a certain amount of lighting. Here, this is really necessary for our water supply because the only way we're going to get water here is through a well, and the well is almost 600 feet deep. And it's a long ways away, so it takes a lot of power to get that up here. So electricity level 2, see I've got the setup with solar panels up to around 5,000 watts and somewhere up to around 20 kilowatts of battery storage. And then you can go on to electricity level 3, which gives you much more significant capacity and battery capability. So you can almost run off-grid as if you were on-grid. Obviously, each one is another progressive step in expense. So these are the basic elements of prepping elements. So it'd be good to think about these, add whatever else you want in there. You want to think what's important, rank them in the list of importance, because these are the elements that are going to help motivate you in terms of a homestead, help you with your goals in homesteading. Now, one of the next areas that people find that they're motivated and they have goals for in homesteading is family and lifestyle control. Most people understand that a homestead is almost ideal for raising children. You have more control over how your children are raised, and they get the opportunities to learn and grow with not only if you have animals around the place, but growing fruits and vegetables, handling things in a rural situation. They're not sitting behind the TV or on a computer game all the time. A homestead lifestyle provides increased lifestyle control. Lifestyle control, that is to say, more control over external influences, the food we eat, and how we spend our time. Often the homestead lifestyle, as wonderful it is, can also be spelled HARDWORK, hard work. And that's actually good for us, and it's good for our children too. It has a goal to it. So on the lifestyle, family lifestyle issues, what family and lifestyle issues do you want control over? What goals do you have in this area? Now we move down to item D, exiting the rat race. One of the common desires, goals, motivations for getting a homestead is to get out of the rat race, slow things down. We want to get off this merry-go-round that we call life. Now, this goal means different things to different people. So this is something you have to sit down yourself and figure out, what does that mean to you? If that's something important to you, what does it mean to you? What goals would you have in this area? What would motivate you in this area? What would this look like to you? That's the question. Now, that's why you need to answer this question and start writing down some options on it. Next segment of this is item E. We have eliminating debt and mortgages. I can remember my parents, they had a mortgage that was about $200 a month. Now, I was back in the 70s when they were earning 20 or 30 times that amount per month. But things have changed. I'll never forget my parents freaking out on the first house that I was going to buy back in early 80s. And I think first house I had, the mortgage was $1,200 a month. And they were just they just thought that I was insane that I would have a mortgage of $1,200 a month. Well, that was a house in the Bay Area. But anyway, it's just so funny because things have changed so much. And now we find that such a huge percentage of our income goes to pay a mortgage. And that may be all fine and dandy while things are working, but what happens when you lose your job or your job gets ratcheted down? What are you going to do then? You're going to lose your house. So, many people look towards a homestead of getting out of this debt situation, no matter how small of a place they need to get, but at least to get past the debt. So they don't have a mortgage, don't have a debt. And, I'd highly encourage that. Our society today is very house poor. Most of people's income goes to pay either their rent or their mortgage. That's typically one of our biggest expenses in the world. And we want to get past that. We want to be able to do other things. We want to be able to grow past that. Personal debt is also out of control in our society. At times, it's because of lack of self-control, but other times it's a Band-Aid because we're so house poor and there's things that need to be fixed like cars and things on the house, all that. So that's another thing to be thinking about. So what would it feel like to be out from underneath personal debt and not have a mortgage for your house? Think about that. That could be a huge motivator. That takes a great deal of stress off of one. Now, to you, where would this rank in your goal and motivation list? This is a really important thing to be thinking about. Next item F we have here is simplification. People are often learning today that less is more. Having a simple house, something you can take care of, getting rid of the debt, getting rid of all these other burdens to simplify our lives. But the problem is with all our debt is that it keeps us so busy that we just never have a time to catch our breath. It's work. Run the rat race. Now we're back to the rat race. We get all these items, but do we have the items or do the items have us? This one's about simplifying our lives, seeking peace, seeking health. Fast-paced life often draws us to where it's, easier. We eat the wrong kind of foods. People get into eating junk food because it's quick. It's easy. They can, do that very quickly. So would you benefit from simplification? Do you seek greater peace? Are you looking for better health? Where does this rank on your list of motivators and goals? Item G, ecology and minimizing your footprint. Many are interested today in leading a self-sustaining life to help sustain the planet. That's, especially if you think this world's going on for, hundreds or thousands of years more, we need to be able to protect it. So, I laud those efforts. Examples of this can include minimizing any or all of the following. Fossil fuel use of other unsustainable materials, emissions of pollutants or any toxic substances, unsustainable farming, ranching practices, waste, home size, land size, and so forth. So there's a number of elements that fall into this. What aspects are important to you? If any, do these items fit into your goals and motivations? If so, list them. And how does this rank along with these other elements? H, personal growth, challenge, fun. Yes, some people want to homestead because it'll be fun. And, you know, there are aspects of it that are fun, and I think that would be kind of unsustainable for homesteading, because as soon as it became unfun, I think you'd be out of it. Or let's say you'd be into it. Yeah, you'd be out of it because you'd be into it. Okay, something like that. There we go. Now the growth and the challenge and the fun aspects, I mean, that can arise no matter where you're at. When you start the journey and starting to get prepared, whether you're in the city or suburbs, and you start making those changes, that's when your growth experience is going to start. You don't actually have to have the homestead yet. So keep that in mind. Discuss what aspects of this, you know, growth, personal challenge, fun elements that you're motivated towards, that draw you. What are your goals along those lines? And write those down. And then we get down to item I. Are there any other categories that you feel are important? Are they important for you? Maybe they're important for others. We'd love to hear it in your comments. And what drives you? What are other motivators and such that drive you? So that's item 1. That's gets us a long ways. And get back to the beginning of this, the goals and motivation. So we saw items A through I on goals and motivation. Next section we go into is specific likes and dislikes. We'll come back here on the next part, and we'll be discussing specific likes and dislikes. So these are really important to understand your nature. This is part of assessing yourself and your situation. So we do the goals and motivation, and the next part is likes and dislikes. So we'll get into that on this next time. So homework. Go into that description, and you can go through those elements we just discussed. Add anything else that is important to you for goals and motivations. Try to rank those by order of importance. Start getting a picture of what it is that drives you. What are your goals for homesteading? You really want to get a clear picture of that. So you can go through that. And it should be remembered that even if you're on the right track, if you just sit there, you're going to get run over. So don't just sit there. Get up, get the description, start working on it. Start working towards it. Please comment. Are there any additional tips you'd like to share? Any other areas? What about, we'd love to hear your experience and what you've gone through. How can we improve the series? And please, give us a thumbie if you liked the video. Take that thumb and press down on the subscribe button. Come back, join us. More elements to this series, and we're getting deeper into the meat of this. RH here. Hasta la Projecto.